Social Justice, Ep.2. Social Justice Will Fail. Some good news. As I go through some significant features of social justice in this and in all of my videos, try to keep the big picture in mind. Yes, social justice is advancing faster than ever before. This video is made in early 2021. And it's advancing in all English-speaking countries as well as some others. But yes, it will fail sooner or later. And why? Well, it misunderstands the problem it claims it will solve. Therefore, its solutions cannot succeed. Secondly, even if we imagine that it does understand the problem, their solutions contain a mysterious gap between their current tactics and the new world that they envision. And three, from an empirical standpoint, we have no evidence that their solutions have worked before, and a tragic amount of evidence of failure for similar measures. Point by point now. The social justice theories claim to be an answer to the world's problems, yet they do not assess the problems correctly. In order for anyone to make that kind of bold statement, a statement about the world's problems, they must have some kind of clarity on the precise nature of the world's problems. If a hypothesis does not in fact describe reality, then we should be, at the very least, highly skeptical of the proposed solutions. The social justice activists propose a social experiment of unimaginable scope as a solution to problems of, well, what they claim to be equal scope. The social justice theorists are exaggerating the scope of the problems in order to justify a massive experiment. By simple analogy, when your car does not start, you can hypothesize all you want about the reason for the not starting, but only testing or troubleshooting those hypotheses against reality will achieve any progress. When working on the car, or in the much more complex problem of something like working on something at the societal level, you had better know the nature of the problem before starting out on a path to fix it. To be clear, no one is claiming here that the world is perfect or could not benefit from some better human interaction. Our social justice theorists, however, claim that the problems are so deep, so basic to the current makeup of society, that even the way we speak to each other is a problem. No, they call it systemic problems. So let's jump into the deep end, shall we? I'm not afraid. Let's talk about systemic racism. While they don't often take the time to explain their term, the social justice theorists claim that American society and others are pervasively racist, as in designed in order to perpetuate racism, such that every thought, every word, and every action its people undertake serves to keep it going. Note that they have changed the meaning of racism here, and intentionally, such that it can encompass everyone and everything as part of the problem. The standard definition of racism, of course, is narrow, and for good reason. We want to be clear about what we are talking about when we make such a claim. The standard definition of racism refers to policies and actions by individuals or organizations that unfairly disadvantage a person or a group of people based upon their race. The standard definition includes, almost explicitly, that some people and policies can do racist things, and some people and policies, likewise, are innocent of that charge. Furthermore, the disadvantaged races are not specified in the standard definition, that is, even though it is often used to mean white people working to oppress some black people. So that means the charge of racism now, the standard definition, could be directed at any people enacting policies against any other people based on their race. Seems consistent, right? No, the social justice theorists have removed the internal consistency from the standard definition of racism to mean that racism, in its systematic form, is something white people, as a group, do to people of color as a group. Actually, some social justice theorists are still arguing with each other if it is even possible for the racism to go the other way around. But they have certainly succeeded in transferring the idea that whites are the only possible racists into the general population. Yet, most people who have become used to the standard definition of racism are perplexed when they hear about how America is a pervasively racist country. The adherents to the standard definition of racism are taken aback, even disgusted, when they hear that, yes, all white people are racist, and that it does not work the other way around. So, who is accurately describing reality here? The social justice argument for systemic racism hinges on the fact that the percentage of black people in America who achieve certain levels of success is lower than the percentage of white people who achieve those levels of success in the post-civil rights era. Let us suppose that that is a correct observation, and it's a broad generalization, but let's go with it for now. What is the reason for the disparity? Rather than admitting it is a complex issue with contributing factors that we may not even understand yet, the social justice theorists point us in one direction, namely that racism is fundamental to the society, such that not even the civil rights legislation could touch it. Then, the social justice theorists go on to implicate all white people, and even some black people who fail to believe in their conclusions, like Kanye West, in perpetuating the system. The social justice hypothesis is reductionist and simple-minded, at the very least, as they will have us believe that there is one reason behind all of it. The hypothesis assumes the worst aspects of human nature as the completely obvious and must not even be questioned explanation for the disparity. At worst, it is horribly racist in the standard definition of the term against white people. But before I address the systematic racism hypothesis, I must first knock out the common confusion that comes along with it. You see, some social justice advocates and most normal people do not understand the new definition, or they may have not even heard of it. And they interpret all the shouting to mean that yes, millions of white Americans are actually demonstrating the standard definition of racism. So this is laughably false. America is a big place with a lot of people doing a lot of things. The vast majority of Americans of any color don't have time for racism. They are just trying to make ends meet. I lived in Los Angeles. This is what it looks like most of the time, no matter who you are. The standard model for dealing with people in America is one in which we work together in order to just get through our difficult lives for the vast majority of time. And that is not just the case for America. It is the case in all functional societies, whether they are multiracial or not. I, for one, have done the work on my own social interactions. I try to approach everyone I meet with a level of respect and keep an open mind as to what the quality of their character will be. So some people earn further respect and some lose the benefit of doubt I have granted them. I have no time or power to oppress anyone. I'm really not interested in it. The overwhelming majority of the evidence we see in 2021 is that vanishingly few people exhibit any racist policies or actions. No, this wasn't always the case, but we have had steady progress, especially since 1964, and even since 1864, when we fought a bloody civil war over it. In fact, it is illegal for institutions to enact racist policies. When one is discovered, it is quickly rooted out, and this is actually a little shocking when it happens, precisely because it is so rare. But there must be some actual racist people out there, right? Sure, a few. But they have been socially shunned, and when one of these people does something bad, it is big news. Again, because it is so rare. It is shocking. If we really want to purge the possibility of racist thought from every one of 330 plus million people, then we are entering into the realm of fantasy. Back to systemic racism and why it is false. When it comes to the great progress we have made, social justice theorists refuse to take the win. They are telling us that the racism is now harder to see. But they can see it. And it's even more insidious than the overt acts of racism used to be. So, is this everywhere racism really that hard to see and, in fact, more insidious? The social justice theorists thought that they had discovered something scientific that would prove their allegations. Implicit bias. Maybe you've heard of it. There was an online test anyone could take that would demonstrate your racism by the milliseconds as you hesitate while responding to images on the screen. While it was hailed as the proof of racism, we soon found out that even the authors of the hypothesis came to admit that the results were not only not replicable, but the results could not demonstrate behaviors in the real world. They were not predictive. However, if you do a search for implicit bias testing now, you will still turn up hundreds of old results, as most people don't even know that it has been discredited, and many of the social justice advocates are too invested in the idea to admit that they could have been wrong. There is one other assertion of evidence for this uber racism: their feelings. Or at least one approved version of the feelings of some people of color. They call it lived experience. We are meant to believe that the whole society is racist because the people yelling the loudest are absolutely sure in their hearts that it is. So we don't believe cults when they make presumably earnest statements about the end of the world, do we? No, we check the evidence. We, as in everyone in America, should get to be the judge of the horrible explanations by social justice theorists and whether they are true or could even be remotely descriptive of what's going on. We should require a lot of evidence and carefully reasoned argument for such big of a claim. We should be able to admit that the problem of the gap in success between some black people and some white people is a complex and multi-factored issue. We should be humble enough to admit that clearly these issues are not solved by scapegoating white people. It is difficult to see how a combination of exaggeration and redefinition is going to help anyone, but a few social justice theorists get promoted to positions of power. But sadly, it is easy to see how people will tire of being called racists for reasons they do not believe, nor reasons they can even confirm to be true or false. Social justice theorists have the same destructive perception on gender equality. The claim is that American society, and more, the whole world this time, are pervasively misogynist. It's all been designed in order to perpetuate hatred of women and even rape and violence against women. Once again, they believe that every word and action that people take, keep it going. And this is what they mean by the patriarchy and even rape culture. The claim that all men are working to disadvantage all women is as absurd as the charges of systemic racism. In reality, instances of statistical disparities are multi-factored issues again. It's a complex system of interaction that we barely understand. Without going into all of the other aspects of social justice, which are similar to the first two I have described in how they propose solutions, I will move on to the huge gap in their proposed solutions to their imagined problems. Social justice advocates have been working tirelessly over decades now at step 1, disrupt and dismantle everything that bears upon oppression. Now, note that this is not done with a scalpel. They are doing it with sledgehammers, as they consider the problem to be everything. Without any prior success or evidence that tearing down everything will result in a better world, the social justice theorists merely take it for granted that a world without oppression will emerge from the ashes of what they're doing. This is magical thinking. In fact, the lessons of history show us that while there are many ways to destroy things, building things is a far different skill, and one that is in short supply. So their plan is this: A, disrupt and dismantle. B, miracle occurs. And C, wonderful world appears. Every so often, undercover journalists catch these people admitting that there will be something like detention camps for dissidents. And that is a hell of a second step. What is going on with step B, miracle occurs? We are getting further along with the first part of the plan, that's for sure, the disrupt, dismantle phase. Yet any sober person should ask, what logically follows from this? We should ask, what replaces the institutions you've destroyed? And how do we expect the replacements to facilitate an oppression-free society? You see, these are the kind of people, our social justice theorists, who think food comes from the supermarket and that electricity comes from the light switch. They do not know how to build and maintain things. They do not know manual labor, sweeping floors, punching time clocks. When it comes to the task of actually governing, the task they demand to be in charge of course, their ignorance will be exposed. Social justice theory, by the way, is just an abbreviation of critical social justice theory. That means what they do is criticize primarily. And criticism is the only thing they really know how to do well. Should they get as far down to hell as tearing absolutely everything to the ground, they will fail to implement their wonder world, as they just haven't thought that far ahead. Okay, finally, social justice will fail because A, not only is there no evidence of the solutions working elsewhere, but B, it is already enacting a form of totalitarian control in order to achieve its ends. If the social justice advocates had any evidence that their solutions worked in the past, then they would be shouting it from the highest mountaintops. In fact, we would have already adopted these measures without the need for their daily hectoring, for the overwhelming majority of people would love to implement policies that we know will probably work. Well, through many demoralizing strategies, the social justice advocates are exerting totalitarian control in order to implement their solutions, such as, but not limited to, excessive and daily hysterical control of language, with no apparent bounds of its appropriate use. Secondly, and related to number 1, censorship of ideas expressed in the public square, which in these times are the social media technologies. Hell, we can't even go outdoors. There is no public square. And finally, intense social pressure at the interpersonal level in order to conform with ever changing standards of that speech and behavior. Of course, we have many examples of totalitarian regimes that have turned their societies into a living hell. While Nazi Germany is somehow held up as the standard for everything, we must not forget that it is the Soviet Union, East Germany, North Korea, and Maoist China which our social justice zealots share the most in common with. So, how can they justify such tyrannical behavior? Well, they claim, after one of their founding fathers of postmodernism, Michel Foucault, that power is not just an important aspect of human relationships, it is everything. Yet the social justice advocates did not see Foucault's narrow insight as a warning. No, they have adopted it as their method going forward. Sober people should ask, by what logic do you claim that your application of power will not result in the very same types of oppression you claim it will ameliorate? Some of the social justice theorists have made it explicit that they have a moral imperative to seize power and control by any means necessary. Note very well that the phrase, the ends do not justify the means, has endured for a good reason. And yes, there is an organization out there called BAMN, By Any Means Necessary, located, of course, in Berkeley, California. Some of us have studied history as more than a vast field of grievances that should be addressed in the present. History shows us that there are large patterns of human behavior, cycles even, and they usually end up in the same place: tyranny, death, and destruction instead of utopia. And there's always lots of burning, so much burning. So what can be done? While the goal of my presentation has been to predict, through the internal problems of social justice theory, that it will implode sooner or later, I know this is cold comfort for the here and now. And it is well underway, and it is going to get worse before it gets any better. Okay, I know that's difficult to hear, but what can you do? We can fight back with principled dissent. So I'm trying to say, what good is it if we turn into one of them? What we can do is model our values every day. Okay? Make ourselves shining examples of what American people could be in our everyday interactions, one-on-one, at work, or in small organizations, or your online presence. We can stay informed. You see, the people who do not agree with you will then know not to bring their weak arguments to the table if you are anywhere near it. And the people in the middle, the undecided, will notice you after time as the principled actor in every situation, and they will eventually seek out you, and when push comes to shove. And we can stay calm. Note that people need not shout that the sky is blue, but that the people who are shouting about politics are trying to add weight to their otherwise weak arguments. So I know it is tremendously difficult to remain calm in the face of lies and all of the psychological abuse that the social justice advocates use. Yet those of us who do will be admired by the people who do not or cannot yet stand up for their own freedom. And that's important. Furthermore, we can stay hopeful. Even if the reversal of the advances of social justice does not occur in our lifetimes, it is still possible to know that history moves in large cycles, in waves and patterns. and that at some point, this coming dark age will crumble, and turn into a better period of history. Remember now, hope is for something good. We should not just stand against social justice, and that's how my channel is named, I know, but we should stand for something in order to make real progress in the world. So with almost every slide here, I have tried to show you things to stand for as we speak out against social justice. Thank you again for your time and attention. Don't forget to hit the like button so I know you feel this is worth your time and I'll continue making the videos. And then look for more. I'm trying to have them come in every other week or so. Goodbye.